Welcome back to Patriot Network TV. I want to urge you to go to the website, patriotnetworktv.com. We're updating the headlines several times a day, 2 new videos a week, multiple editorials. We have a great source of information and knowledge for you. Please avail yourself of it. I want to quote the President of the United States, and I want to talk about how this one quote points out in such a significant way the biggest difference between them and us. The President is quoted. He's at one of these fancy schmancy donor deals where they're paying $38,000 a plate to get in and listen to the President. And he says, and I don't know if he knew the cameras were on or the microphones were on, but he says, and I'm quoting here, "The one thing that we absolutely know for sure is that if we don't work even harder than we did in 2008, then we're going to have a government that tells the American people, you are on your own." Okay? Now, that quote to me is manna from heaven. I want the U.S. federal government to look at me and say, you are on your own. The great American spirit is the spirit of the rugged individualist. We want to live, as Jefferson said, free between the ground and God. We don't need the government interfering. The most recent update on food stamps is we're up to almost 48 million U.S. citizens getting food stamps. There are 75%, if you can trust the numbers coming from people like Bob Beckel, 75% of Americans get some form of federal aid. We don't need to have 3 out of 4 people in the U.S. on the federal tit. That's not acceptable. We can't have a country that runs that way. What has happened to the backbones of the American people that they will live in a country where the top 1% pays 40% of the income tax? What has happened to the American people that we allow 53% of American households to pay 0 federal income tax? The people who are currently pulling the wagon are going to stop pulling the wagon. The 53% of households that are not involved in pulling the wagon are going to get the surprise of a lifetime when the producers, the makers, turn to the takers and say, that's it, we've had it, get out of the wagon. The safety net, so-called, turned into a hammock. 48 million people taking food stamps? Oh my God, I can't believe this. My grandfather, in the Great Depression, when the WPA truck showed up out in front of his house, my dad didn't have shoes. My dad's in his 80s now. My grandpa's dead. But my dad still tells this story. He wanted shoes in the worst way. He was barefoot. And my grandpa looked at him and said, you don't need those shoes from the government. And he said, oh, please, please, Dad, please, I'm barefoot. I don't have any shoes. He says, I need my self-respect a hell of a lot more than you need those shoes. And that changed my dad, and it changed my grandpa. It changed the way they saw the world. 48 million people collecting food stamps. What has gone wrong in this country? American people, you're going to be on your own. You ought to be on your own. The idea that you've got to go to the government to get food, good God, what has gone wrong? How far off the rails are we? When you can't even get food, you're telling me you can't get food, you can't grow food, you can't go shoot a deer, you can't get food for your family. You got to have 48 million people on that form of welfare alone? Something is horribly wrong. And it's wrong not just at the level of Obamanism and the Obamanomics failure on the great porculus spending bill. It's wrong not only at that level. There's something wrong in the hearts of American people who 48 million strong will line up to take food stamps. There's something wrong with people who are unemployed that'll take 99 weeks of unemployment, and when the unemployment ends, what do? They go sit in at Wall Street, occupy Wall Street. We want more unemployment. That's not the United States of America. Every one of us who are makers, every one of us who are producers, we have to put down our foot against this socialism, this creeping moral decay. It is unacceptable in the United States of America to have 48 million people beg for food. They need their self-respect more than they need government cheese. It is time for us as a nation to say enough is enough. We need absolute action now by every maker. All of the makers, all of the producers, you have to send the message, no more welfare. None, zero, zip, nada, it's over. Those of us pulling the wagon, here's the message to those riding in the wagon. Get out of the wagon and start helping. The absolute essence of the American experience is you are on your own. You were meant to live free between the ground and God. Any effort to support you in a way that takes away initiative, that castrates you morally and emotionally, is bad, not just for you, but for the rest of us. It is time, America, to rise up as one with a backbone and say, no more welfare. God bless you. God bless the United States.